Exciting.
Okay, this is exciting. So that was the voice that you heard is our guest speaker's voice. It really started on an exciting note. We have Giles Roberts all the way from Perth, Australia today. So, my friends, this is, if I'm not wrong, the 180th episode of my first step ever.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Fantastic. Cool. 18.
Yes. And on this 180th episode of my first step ever, I would like to say that we invite speakers from all across the globe, and this would be the first from Perth. We have had many from Australia, but first from Perth, Australia.
Cool.
And I'm very excited that the debutant is here. His journey and his background is something that I am very, very personally kind of drawn towards. He's a facilitator, speaker, community builder, and he's a founder of Soul and a lot more. I'm going to kind of give you a good sneak peek and intro of his very shortly, but I just want to jump in and say this is everything that I love: speaking, facilitating, helping people. So it was very natural for me to kind of understand his journey, how he came about doing what he's doing, and invite him to be the guest speaker on this episode. So my listeners, stay put. If you haven't yet, please press that subscribe and follow button, and let's get into this episode now. Some people chase ideas, others help launch them. And then there's Giles Roberts, the powerhouse facilitator behind GP projects, and who's been doing both with purpose and the passion, chasing the ideas but also help launching them. And in this episode, we meet the creative mind guiding community first initiative that helps people produce, plan, project their big and small ideas into the world. From grassroots dreams to impact driven projects, Giles is all about making things happen with people at the center. But
Nice.
yeah,
It's nice to be mentioned in that way, Shani. Often when you reflect on what you do yourself, and to have it reflected back on you is really fantastic, because you get lost in your own world of what you're doing, and having someone tell it back to you is really, really lovely. So thank you. It's nice to hear that about myself.
absolutely. So we know that where you are today, but what we are here to discuss is about your first steps. Where did it all begin? How did Giles go from being the guide behind the scenes to stepping into his own spotlight? So let's uncover the journey of community builder, dream amplifier, and ideas in action champion right here on my first step ever. So, Giles, let's just jump into it. Let us all, our listeners, whoever's watching us today, and myself, we will be at your disposal. Please take us to your very childhood, where you were growing up. What was the kind of mindset of the people that you were surrounded with, and who were you as a child?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Fremantle. So I'm from Perth. Fremantle is a small town on the coast of Perth. I now live in the southwest in a place called Denmark, very close to Albany. So I'll go into that later on. But Perth's about 4 hours away now. But I'm a West Australian, and I did grow up in Perth, Fremantle. So I grew up in North Fremantle, which is a fantastic part of Fremantle, just over the bridge. My mother was a school teacher, and my dad is an architect and a builder. And they basically bought into a small town at that time, which was an industrial space. It was sort of the end. It's just tourism hadn't really started yet in Fremantle. It was in the 80s, or actually they bought in the 70s. And it was a sort of a construction place, and oil tankers and lots of containers. And my dad was attracted to the area because of its rough creativity, and land was a bit cheaper, and they moved there. And Dad built the house, and we moved to the house the year I was born. So the house has been there 40 years now,
Wow.
42 years.
That is
And yeah, I grew
amazing.
up around my mum, who was very creative, very funny, a school teacher who was always doing very interesting things in education, sort of lots of play and comedy. She's a naturally very funny person. And my dad, a real salt of the earth community man, who basically started building houses and becoming a designer in that space. So it was a very creative household. We had no TV growing up, which is back then. I mean, now that might be normal, but back then was definitely different. The 80s and 90s, not having a television was, that was
Can't
sort of
imagine
weird
a world.
in Australia. But we spent a lot of time in the park with my two brothers and friends in the community. So we had a great early years. I'm very loved family on both sides. My mum and dad, big, large families, a lot of time away. And we were always sort of on project with my dad's work. Like, we never really had holidays or anything like that, but we'd always go away with his work. often into remote parts of Australia or to the southwest, where he's doing a lot of work on wineries or building different fold-up buildings in the northwest. So I think we had a lot of adventures. I think the crux of it really is, there was always Lego and Play-Doh and art and lots of different visitors to our household from all my parents. And we had a fantastic sense of freedom as young kids in our area, where you could just run over the park or run down to the river. And North Fremantle's situated between the river and the sea, so we spent all that time in the ocean and the river and on Dad's little boat, and at a very small primary school with about 50 people there. So it was a very, very, it's an awesome childhood. I'm very happy my parents really put a lot into to looking after us and making sure that happened. Schooling was also quite alternative, I think, back then for us, because it was a very small school. Often, I think it was about 60 students at North Freo Primary when I started, and often the classes were split together, and I had a very alternative teacher at that time, Laurie Burke. Shout out to Laurie Burke. She was ahead of her years, and she believed in probably more of a sort of a free way of teaching young people around experiential learning and how to solve your own problems, and not just rote learning, not just answers, about how to experience, how to problem solve, how to challenge each other. We did a lot of plays and artwork and wrote scripts, and we worked on projects even then in primary school. So I think that's probably the core basis to who I am, are those early learning experiences, both at home and in my primary school setting. I like to rant, Ashani, so feel free to cut me off at any time.
I was just about to come in and just say that it just sounds like such an interesting childhood and quite happy. And it also sounds something like, what people crave for these days. It sounds like you had community, and because there were no technology, entertainment technology, just to say, the time was spent more in actually thinking and creating creative things so that you can be involved in that. You spend time with your family, with your friends. At school, you mentioned that is quite interesting. I mean, regarding your teacher and professors, I think they play such an important role. And if you find the right one while growing up, I think it's like they just shape the way that you think forever in your life. And I can see that, so thank you so much, Laurie. I think we can see that seed being planted in Giles over here. And also, how amazingly you spoke about your parents and your mother. For whatever you do at this point in time, I can just see, the seeds being sown maybe at that point in time. And given all the scenario, I want to understand, or maybe I'm curious to know that what really intrigued you about your childhood now when you look back at it.
I guess I'm a parent now. I have a 2-year-old, and I've moved to a new part of Western Australia, which is Albany in Denmark. So sort of doing what my parents had done, moving to another place, and then having to rebuild a community and start a community, and notice and remembering what I liked growing up, and remembering what was good for me. And I think proximity to your neighbour, being able to walk down the road and meet people. Yeah, we have technology now, and we're a little bit in the bush here as well. So there are maybe some, which is great, but also there's some, challenges around, in rural, regional life where in Denmark. So I think, you rethink back on your childhood when you have children, obviously, and also I think it's support as well. Like, it's the crazy thing, that the cliche saying, it takes a village to raise a child, which is absolutely true, but also it takes a village to raise the parents as well, because parents need support as well. And I think building that around you, it takes a lifetime. And I realized that my parents were experts at that. My dad has built relationships his whole life, and that is really valuable. That's wealth. Real wealth is community and how your everyday today is, because everyone gives back to you. So we're starting that here. We're definitely not there yet, but I think community and relationship building is probably the strongest thing you can do, whether in business or in just general life, because it just is the all-encompassing sort of health of your life,
Yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting, and a very strong footing of your journey, I would say, to kind of, go on. So from here, Giles, I am very, very intrigued to know, although it seems very predictable that what path you might have taken in your teens or in your school or maybe, in your senior years. But is that true? If not, we would love to understand that what were you kind of growing into as a young boy at that point in time?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool that you said Laurie, because that particular teacher had a profound impact on me for things like this. So in the 90s, in a primary school in Western Australia, you would call your teacher Miss or Mrs. or Mister, and our teacher was like, "No, don't call me that. That's just a construct that's been made up." And we're
Love
like,
that.
"Well, like a 10-year-old, like cool," and call me by my first name, which is just totally personal. And she was out there. She probably was. Her type of teaching is coming in now. This is
Yeah.
sort of 30 years later. And I think I went to high school in a Catholic school, which was in another part of Perth, in Claremont, because we had some family members who went there, and that was very different because I remember going there, and there was religious education class, which I had never done before, and we had to wear uniforms, which was new for me as well. But again, that school was actually really good because it was a very community-based school within this Catholic community, within this particular part of Perth. And so I really, again, that word is coming back. So like relationships and community, like no matter what you're learning, who you're doing it with, and having a solid group of people around you is just so important. So I think, yeah, good groups of people, and I've been very lucky to have been surrounded by good groups of people like my whole life essentially. But those early years, and especially teenage years, are super important to have good role models around you, good teachers, good family members, and also good peers, good
Yeah.
mates.
Yeah.
It's needed for everything.
Yeah, and what I also believe, as you're growing up around that time in your late teens, by that time in our life, we have already been introduced to this sort of on the edge of entering the world, and then we are also kind of working towards understanding our own selves, and we most of us are maybe in this rebellious mindset, or we really have like what we don't understand what's happening. Most of us go through some ups and downs, and it's very challenging to understand our emotions at that point in time. Did you go through any of these sorts of emotional challenges about your own self or what's happening in the world, or was the support very and the guidance was very, very helpful for you to have a clarity while moving forward?
Yeah, you sure? Do you mean in the teen years or after at any time?
Let's say late teens, early 20s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
think definitely
turbulent
that.
time.
No, totally. Yeah, teens are like your hormones are changing. I recently did some mental health work with an organisation in Western Australia, and we talked a lot about pruning and the things that happen in your brain physically as a young person. And it's sort of like your brain as a young male, your brain isn't fully developed until I think it's something like crazy, like sort of even mid-20s, late 20s. And
Uh-huh.
as a female, it's a bit younger. But so that's an incredible, like physical thing that's happening inside of your body and hormones and all those things. And then reflected on the outside is that you're going through a rite of passage as a young person. You're turning from a child into an adult. We don't really have in our society, we don't have very clear pathways in rites
Mm.
of passage. All of a sudden you're meant to be a man, and so it's confusing as a young person. You're 18, you can drive a car, you can vote, you can drink alcohol, you might move out of home, all these things, but it's not like there's any real guidance that takes you there. Lucky enough, in my family, I had uncles and aunties and a close knit, larger family, which I think is important for those specific roles. But yeah, I think growing up is when you're in the younger teens, you're very interested in groups and fitting in. You don't want to be, you want to fit in, you want to be cool. And I think I joined groups that skateboarded. I was rebellious. Um, and I think in the late teens, everyone sort of starts to become friends again,
Yeah.
which is nice. And then I think once you leave school as well, you sort of realize that whole it's an institution, right? And you think,
Yes.
oh wow, I've been in this institution. And I went to university thinking that, oh, okay, at university you're able to think a bit more freely. You're not just regurgitating form work. I mean, I
Mm.
loved school. I had a fantastic time at school, but I think the social element was probably more important than the educational element
Mm.
per se. I always say schools should teach you to change a car tire and how to do a tax return and how to have an adult relationship and how to how to manage your own mental health and all these things. Probably
Everything.
they do in schools now, but there was definitely a significant feeling finishing school
Yes.
in Claremont and perhaps coming back to more of my Fremantle roots.
Yeah. No, so from what I hear, is it safe to say that by your early teens or late teens, because you had a good guidance, is it safe to say that you had clarity of where you're headed and also clarity about your own emotions and yourself? Is that what we can understand from this?
I think so. I think that's a lifelong journey, really, for
Yeah.
me. I think the clarity that I had is I wanted to travel. I wanted to experience greater things. I definitely felt at Perth, Western Australia. I felt like people did the same things. Friend groups did the same things. I studied French at high school. I was good at languages. I think my personality type, I found languages very easy, so I did French and did well in. So I went and lived in France once I'd finished school. I worked very
Oh,
hard to go there. And lived over there. I wanted to work in a winery, but I was too young. I was only 17, so I had to go back to school in France after visiting friends. So the urge to travel and explore was definitely there. I think you're
yeah.
forming as a person every day of your life, and I think you are shaped by the experiences, the people, the problems, the everything that you go through. So I think that's ongoing for me even to this day. But I think there was a thirst for discovery. A lot of people in Western Australia, you can
Mm,
go and start university at 17, and you can be out of university or a school or TAFE, whatever, by sort of 20, and
mhm.
into a big job by 20. And that's very young
Yeah,
to set your life pathway. So I wanted to experience other things.
yeah,
So
but
travel
that
was one of those things.
for sure. But Giles, I also feel that is that the sooner you enter the market, sounds bad market, but the sooner you enter the workspace, I think obviously the more number of years you have to make mistakes. But I would like to,
Absolutely.
yes. Sorry, I just want to kind of go back to something very interesting that you mentioned about working really hard to get all the funds that was required to go to France and kind of do the study that you want to and also travel. And I
Yeah,
think this would be of interest to our listeners and people who are watching this, not just because of that you're going to a different country and traveling, but also the responsibility that you took on that, and how hard you worked. So can you just take us through that journey, that how did you plan on moving, how did you kind of go about saving, what did you do to finally reach there?
absolutely. Yeah. So I've sort of missed out G projects and the whole work side of stuff. I got carried off in the romance of my life journey. But yeah, so basically I'm a project consultant, or I'm a creative project consultant. So I work on projects, different projects, and I run some of my own. I think that really started even at high school, where one of my first jobs, I worked at a deli, had a paper run from probably the age of 12 to 13, when you can sort of legally start work. You
Oh,
do pocket money and all that stuff at home. I think my parents were good in the fact that we always helped out around the home. It was never, you never got anything for free. It was always you had to work for it. That was very much
amazing.
instilled in the nature of our home. I started cleaning my dad's office when I was 15, I think, a couple of times, or once a week or once a fortnight. And then the office across the road, I started cleaning their office. And I think I had 2 or 3 offices which I was cleaning at that time. So that's how I employed myself during high school. And that was just,
This is incredible.
myself
Start
representing myself. It wasn't much money, but it was enough, to
instill
get things I
the,
needed.
yeah.
And then straight out of school, I did a variety of jobs. I was working at a bar down the road. I think at nights I was teaching surfing. I
Hmm.
started teaching surfing at those early ages. And that, I think, surf coaching as well was where I started you needed an ABN to be a surf coach
Yeah.
to work for a company. So that's where I think the small business side of things started. And I realized that as a sole trader, as having an ABN working for yourself, you represent yourself as well. So you're
Hmm.
not just hiding under a company. You're not hiding. You are your product, especially if you're a coach in a coaching role. So they were my early days of sort of working. I think having a goal and a time setting is very important as well. I mean, you're using France as an example. I had to make a certain amount of money by a certain amount of time to last me a certain amount of time away. So yeah, I had to work quite hard. I had to focus on that and that was when I was 17 and 18. So there was a lot of parties. People were, you know, um, having fun out of school, and I was sort of most weekends I was stuck in a bar as a glassy. But I
What
had an idea of where I
yeah.
wanted to go.
Yeah. But what do you believe that kept you working so hard towards your goal, whereas your friends at that point in time, they were partying in the bar? Because I think that's the age where people really would like to kind of, go out and have the best of their time. So what really helped you kind of work on your goals at that point in time?
I think this is very early days. I think I've always been quite driven towards a goal based outcomes, and I think projects for me, what I do now, it really helps me with that as well. When I really like working on projects because I know there's a start, a middle, and an end, and I feel like I can conceptualize that in my brain quite well. You've got to get yourself organized to start the project. You've got to keep the project going, and at some point the project will have an end, and you'll be looking for the next one. And I think as a project consultant or a creative consultant on projects, I also I enjoy that. I enjoy working on different pieces of work because there's no monotony. There's no I'm getting up every day and it's the same thing over years and years. Every day is different. I have to find my own work. So I think having project-based work is a great way to motivate yourself. That, I think, comes from my personality as well. I'm able to manage different projects at a time. I'm able to manage various things at a time. But I'm also, and the reason why I can't do some jobs is because I'm high energy, probably a little bit ADD. I struggle to do the same thing all the time. So I need that for myself. And I think there's personality types who, maybe some are good at certain roles, and we all work together as teams. So I think that's, if you can work out your personality type in relation to the kind of work you want to do, that can also help you discover there's a bunch of personality type tests online, which you can do as well, there's no exact personality type, I don't think, but it can definitely help you discover the type of work you might like to do as well, or the type of project.
Oh my God, Giles, I think I just discovered my personality type as well.
Yeah. Doing lots of things. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I mean,
and you know what? This personality type really, really suits the future, because probably gone are the days of having, even now, like working for a company for 30 years gone. The future, and now with AI and automation, I've always said to people, look, let's go with skills, not roles. And the little company, the little project I'm working on at the moment, Soul Studio, is all about skills, because really you need to be able to sell some sort of skill or process of skills, because possibly half the jobs we're looking at may change, and we'll definitely change, and being adaptable is going to be different. And we'll probably be selling ourselves in as freelancers too in the future, which I think, so if you've already got a handle on being a bit of a freelancer, what's called a portfolio career these days, I've never known the words for these things. I've just done it, and it's suited I've sort of created my work around my lifestyle. So when I wanted to travel, I had surf coaching because it was seasonal. When I was working overseas, I had a certain type of work because I was overseas and I had restrictions on what I could do. I was, language barriers and all those things. When I was living in Sydney, I was in a different part of my life which meant I could do different things. Now I'm a father and a family, so my work has always followed my lifestyle, and I've created the work I need. I don't earn $1 million, but I have a relatively healthy life. Work-life balance, which I think is a bit of a scam, because it should just be life balance, right? I feel like some of my projects have been volunteer. Some of my projects are to do with my house, and I don't really see a difference between work and my daily living. And they're all projects to me. Some of them make money, some of them don't make money. You need a balance of that, obviously. But I think that if we step outside of, everyone's a brand essentially, or will be a brand. And if we can brand ourselves well and sell clearly the ideas of what we're good at, then I think that's a great thing, a great skill to get to used to in the future. I used to work at a hostel in Sydney. It is one of the many crazy projects and jobs I've worked on. And people would often come in with a resume and hand it to me and say, can you print this out? And it would be like this 30-page resume to go and get a job as a... Yeah, exactly. And I said, look, to go cold hand these out at certain. I said, no, look, from my experience, I've printed a lot of these and I get people coming back to print more. What I would do if I was looking for a job or I wanted to start a project, I would get a business card or just a small card with my name on it, my phone number, an email, like a contact that you actually answer and you check. And I would put on that card 3 things that I do really well, unrelated to what kind of job I want or what project I want to work on. Three awesome skills. And then I would go in the next month and go to like 30 social occasions. I'd go to like a party every weekend. I'd go to a run club. I'd go to a sauna group. I'd meet lots of people. And every time I got in a conversation, I'd hand out my card. And then from there, you've got a network of people who remember you, who know you and go, oh, that person was interested in that. How can I? Because people really want to do that. I know you probably do that yourself, Ishani, and I definitely do. When someone says, "Oh, and you have people ask you, do you know a plumber? Do you know?" Humans still love that personal element, So I think the world is going that way. So I lost track of where we were because I just got ranting. But
no, I think even I got lost. One question I'd asked, but I think I picked up 3 very interesting things that you mentioned just right now. First thing that I would like to address is thank you for voicing that one really do not need to be a millionaire to live a life that they would like, the life that they want to design. When actually someone really sits down to account and project for the next couple of years, like 20 years or 30 years of their life, that how much they really need to survive, obviously taking an inflation in account, if you do the math, you'll realize you wouldn't really need that much of money to live a comfortable, balanced, and a happy life. But having said that, to each their own. But this is, to put perspective to our listeners and also people watching us, that what you really need to kind of move your focus towards is what really works for you, what you really like. And if you are yet not clear, keep working on that. And what will really give one happiness is obviously the life where you have your loved ones around you, you're able to do what you really want, for money or not for money, however it is. So thank you so much for being that amazing example, because you are so full of energy. You definitely, when you're saying something, you mean that, and it's coming across the
Thank you.
passion with which you're talking, and it's also very genuine love for everything that you're doing. And I can see that how you've built step by step, as I can say you. And the other thing that I wanted to kind of mention is, I think you mentioned something very, very interesting, and now touch upon that. Usually, I have things in my mind, but anyhow, I think I can definitely come back to that.
That's
But it
okay.
was, yeah, but it was all about. Oh yes, I got back to, because that was very interesting that you mentioned. You were saying that one should not. It's not like one should, but I think in your experience and opinion, it was about talking about skills rather than talking about the roles. And this is what I think people still struggle to understand, because now I'm in a
Totally.
phase of transitioning in my career as well. So I've had my career kind of working in production, in marketing, and in customer client experience. And given
We
all
sound
that,
similar. Yep.
yeah, I realize that I have a liking for helping people,
Hmm.
probably coaching people. But along with that, I also love to speak, I love to host, I'm a
Mm.
facilitator. So how can I combine these skills, or maybe be able to offer my skills? And when I'm talking to people, I'm meeting people, they're like, when I tell them these skills, what I can bring to the table, or how I can maybe enhance or help something, the last sentence would be, so again, what sort of a role are you looking for? Question.
Yeah. No, you're totally. And look, not everyone will understand. Yeah, the sort of role based. Sorry, yeah, sort of skill based offerings versus
Mm,
role based work, and they're two different paradigms. But I think what you can do, and then this is how we can like break it down. Maybe is like how can you solve a problem for someone in any
mm,
business, in any role? Is like present it present the what is the problem, and this is how I could solve that problem, which is a great one. And I'm just looking here, one of the questions was fuel for the future, this these ideas for the future. I thought the first one is like starting your idea now. Like if you sitting there and you feel like you're going nowhere, just start driving the car, because it'll get the ball moving. And this idea of, yeah, you have to offer something that is specific enough to be able to solve a niche problem for a niche community, because that's
mm.
how the world is going. It's all very niche. You can find on your phone every group in the world for every specific thing, and you've got to offer a way to solve someone's problem to make their life easier, which is what we pay people for in this modern world, right? But also, and I've found this as well, you have to be adaptable enough, and that idea has to be able to change, because technology is moving so rapidly, and the way we do business is moving so rapidly. Even before COVID, like having this sort of podcast way to chat to people all over the world wasn't as much, and COVID
Yeah,
brought that on. So I think you have to have an idea of what you want to do and how to help people, and you've got the skills. You could essentially solve any problem, and it's just sort of finding the people who need their problem solved in the right
love that.
community.
Yeah,
And maybe you're working for people who have enough money to solve those problems, and you do some volunteer work in another passion on the side, however you make it work. And then I think the third point on that future, fuel for the future for me, was a bit cliche, but be a good human. Be honest, be polite, be fun, bring your best. Do like this podcast. Do what's naturally intrinsic to you, because people really notice that, and especially now in the age of AI, humans will really start to gravitate towards what is natural, what they believe to
mm,
be human natural, and that will become special. Human experience. There's a great quote from my when I was at film school in Sydney, and this is another project, another story that I had been on, and one of our lecturers, it was at TAFE, which I did TAFE after university because I found TAFE to be very hands-on. It's skill building, which I really enjoyed. University was great for social things, I found, and I learned. I got jobs through university friends, but probably not so much from my degree, communications degree. Not saying that learning is good.
It's a tip for people listening to us.
Yeah, that's right. And I think universities are changing now as well. Universities offer innovation now, which they never did back then, which is really cool, So, but this particular lecturer at TAFE said, look, you can be and he was what's called a DOP, which is a director of photography, and he was teaching us how to do camera work. And he said, look, you could be the best DOP in the world, the best DOP in Sydney, the best camera operator, and you're an asshole. Excuse my language. You're not a nice person. No one wants to work with you. But if you're a pretty good DOP, you're outgoing, you remember people's names, you show up on time, you're can-do, you try and solve the problem, you get along with people, you work well, everybody wants to work with you. Everyone will remember you, and you're going to get better because you're going to get heaps of work. And that really stuck with me, and that goes for any service-based work anywhere, because if you're representing yourself or whatever you do, at some point you are representing yourself. If you do it with integrity, people can pick up on it. I think that's going to become super real in these coming years. That if you value what you do, then people will notice that. And that's maybe something that can be followed if you're sort of struggling to find out where you want to go. What's that intrinsic nature within me? How do I want to help people? What's the problem I can solve?
Super insightful. And I think with that, my little personal mentoring session on record.
And mine too. Yeah, I'm learning. Yeah. I need to listen to these things. It's easy to say it. It's harder to follow it. I'm very good at talking as well, Ishani. Don't worry.
That makes two of us. I wonder who's going to listen. But just moving forward from here, Giles, as we speak a lot about the different projects that you take up and the different, obviously, you said you get very bored if you're just doing one thing, but given that you are managing so many different projects, some for paid, some are non-paid, voluntary purposes, is there ever a void period when it comes to financial stability, or is there ever, I'm sure there's a risk involved, because if it's a project-based thing, you never really know where's the next thing coming from. You are your salesperson, you are your own the customer experience person, you are the one who's sort of supervising the execution. You have a team for sure.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about that, because I think people who are listening to us, watching us, I'm sure they have this in mind. How could they, balance all that stuff?
No, that's a fantastic question, Ishani, and probably one that's becoming more and more relevant as things get more expensive. I've grown up in luxury, I guess, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, where it hasn't been as expensive as now. But I also think that the way I was brought up was very frugal. I'm a good saver. I'm not that good at investing. I'm not very good at taking risk. That's a skill I'd like to learn how to do more of. Risk with financial risk, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm very good at savings, and I've never bitten off more than I can chew. Even when I worked in Sydney, I lived in a hostel while I worked during film school, so I didn't have the same rent as other people. I lived in a van for 2 years in Sydney when I was working as a young production person in film there, because, just to keep the rent costs down. Because I could keep the rent costs down, I could do creative projects. I started working on film jobs, and I realized that, being an actor was the highest paid job on some of these jobs. So I changed to being an actor, and then I had more time. So I think being frugal is definitely a good way to start, although you need to invest at some point. Now I have a daughter. We have a house and a property. Beautiful. So I need regular work. Obviously savings help with that. Taking large contracts. If you're working for yourself, for the last year, I worked for a larger organization for about a year under my own guise, but that was a year-long piece of work, so I knew I had an income for that year. And then as things change, this is why I like having several projects going. So at the moment, I'm running a bingo show, Disco Bingo, which keeps going. So that helps me to have an income. Sometimes we rent out some of the spaces below this house on an Airbnb project. That also creates a small income whilst the next project comes along. So I think that's the way for me has always been to have various sources of income. Another source of income is also looking at your expenses, and this is one we don't often look at and go, okay, half of these I don't need, or cutting back. Like this property, for example, here we are now starting to grow some of our own veggies. We're about to put some solar in. If we can get my partner has an electric car, we're able to use things like that. So you can start to reduce your costs in a variety. And there's so many. If you look on the internet now, there's a million websites and a million um, accounts that can show you how to live more frugally, or more frugally is not. I think it's a bad word. Like more cleverly, live cleverly, so you can spend more time. How many streaming accounts do you have? Get rid of them. You don't need to just use the free ones, or there's a million hacks like that.
It's like
But
not going
having
ahead.
savings.
Sorry, I was just saying it's like not doing the mindless spending.
Absolutely, just being clever with it. Like look at the hippies. They're the most clever out of anybody. They have managed to join forces. And I live with the place where we live in Denmark. There are several like community groups who are able to. And I've traveled around the world to different ways of alternative living. Where we're very in Australia. We complain about the cost of living, where we lead it's one of the most, in terms of GDP and the way we live our lives, we live a very luxurious life. If you've ever lived anywhere else in the world, you know that we live in a very wasteful way. We live in massive houses compared to everywhere else in the world. We're very lucky. So go traveling, go live somewhere else for a year, and then you realize that we have more than you need. And often, in my experience of traveling and living in different parts of the world, is that the people who live closer together, even if it's in a lower socioeconomic, sometimes different parts of the world, there's a different connection. There's a different type of happiness that can't be bought or sold, and people are generally, I'm not going to say happier because it's harder life, but there's a different style of living. And I think as Australians, we sort of have removed ourselves in our big homes and our big cars and all this type of stuff. So maybe we're moving back towards living closer together, or having to live close together, which will make us, I don't know, bit of a rant, but you know where I'm going.
No, that's interesting to know. But I would say that you definitely are a risk taker, because I think putting all the bets on yourself to be able to find different projects at some point in time and to be able to make sure that they are running parallelly is also kind of a risk, because you never know where the things are coming from, or
Absolutely,
it may or may not come from. So you definitely are a risk taker. But I think from the more I hear you, the more I come to this understanding. You have a very positive, I wouldn't call the word positive, but you have the joy of living. It just oozes out, probably.
That's good to hear, Shani. I feel like had about 4 hours sleep last night because we have a very active toddler who's been pretty intense at the moment. So that's nice to hear that's still coming through. I feel like fatherhood is definitely maybe more of a grumpy character from less sleep and a bit of stress, but yeah, there is a joy of living there. And look, a lot of my work has been out of necessity as well, because often I don't apply for many jobs and not got them as well. So I've gone, okay, well, I'm going to have to do something by myself. There's a necessity as well. It's not always, innovation is not always from a place of luxury. It's from, I have to create something because I need to. And if you can fall back on your savings, you can. That's another skill to be able to live that way. I think when I was an actor in Sydney, if you were free on Tuesday, you could get the job. A lot of people had to work. So you just had to be clever about how you created a lot of actors worked at night. A lot of actors worked in bars, or, you just do what you have to do to create your lifestyle. But innovation and creativity also come out of being forced. Being
like
forced
you have no option left.
You have to. You don't have an option. You have to do it. So I think there's this sort of myth that, and I think in the sort of innovation world and the startup and the founder world, there's a lot of it is based around economics and how well you're doing financially. And your sort of version of success is your own. You might base that around. For me, it definitely has to be some sort of income. Otherwise, it doesn't keep going. And I use this for projects. If your project is financial, you can keep doing it. If it's not financial, it has to end at some point because it's going to run out of steam unless there's a good volunteer base. But also how you measure your life in terms of your indicators for success. It might be, if it's more holistic, there's people who have a million, who are fantastic business people, but have horrible relationships in their life. There's people who have really awesome relationships and heaps of time, but no money. So, it's just this whole balance and you just have to find out what your markers for success are and know yourself and go, okay, I need to have this much sort of money, and I need this much time in my community. I need this much time for my relationship, and I want to have a family. So, or I don't. So that's different again. But yeah, I'm doing okay. I think I'm.
That's great to hear all that, Giles. And I know that I had a couple of questions through, but we have definitely not followed that, and I usually don't follow that.
That's okay.
It's always good to kind of, go through the flow of the conversation. I think you never know where you
Yeah,
land. Given that, I think I love to see your positive side. I love to see your joyful side and the mindset that you carry. But we all have that up and down
totally.
period. So give us a sneak peek into the Giles who has been through that challenging period, and if you would like to maybe share one of those, be it professional, personal, however, whatever you like to share, and how did you really deal with that? Or what did it teach you that helped you, move forward in life?
Absolutely, Shani. I think that's really, really good of you to talk about this as well. A lot of podcasts and what we see on social media is just the same with me. I post the good things and the relevant things that are happening in my life. I don't put up the struggles that much. So I think it's true to talk about what is hard in our life. And I think it's 50-50. Even life is always challenging. I remember being in Sydney as an actor and an entertainer. I was totally burnt out. I had what's called a burnout. That was a
Mm.
mental health sort of breakdown. I was working sort of 7 days a week, entertaining at night in a band, being a clown in TV adverts during the day, and I almost lost the sense of myself. I didn't know who I was anymore, and that ended up in moving away from that space and doing something that I found more to be more in teaching and helping people build skills, which I found to be more valuable to myself at this time, rather than selling my image and my silly faces and things like that, which I can still do,
Mm.
which is a great skill.
You've
So I've
been, yeah.
definitely been through some mental health challenges, and I try to be part of organisations that support that. So I worked for a mental health organisation here in Perth, and I did some work with a surfing mental health organisation, and now I'm doing the push-up challenge at the moment, which is a friend who
Wow.
is part of that, which is a great. So just being honest with your struggles. People have different struggles,
Mm.
whether it's relationship or. But I think if you're honest with your struggles and you reach out, then you're able to overcome them, and you'll find that most people are struggling with something, and it's normal. It's the human existence. Life is not easy, but if you are on your own, it's going to be a lot harder. If you can open up and get support, then life
Love
you'll
that.
find that everyone goes through that. Yes,
And that's so
it's good
important.
to talk about those things.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for of opening up and giving us a sneak peek into exactly what were the things that probably
Mm,
were draining you off. And this actually makes me think as well on my journey so far. Sometimes it just happens that while you're growing up, you think that, oh, this is something that because you're really good at that, you feel like, oh, I will really have a lot of good time doing that, or this might just give me the boost that I'm looking for. But when you're actually in it, you realize that something is not working out, even if you're really
mm,
good at it. And that which is not working out is actually misalignment with your values. You
absolutely.
that's not, the work is great, but it's not something where your heart is placed well. And so I think that's a journey that someone takes and kind of goes ahead. Giles, thank you so much for taking us through your journey. It's been such a joy ride. Let me just put that
Yeah,
word over
awesome.
here.
Thanks,
um,
Ashani.
but before we take your leave, I'd like you to kind of leave our listeners with two things. Number one, from your experience and your journey, if you reflect and you look back right now, what one advice can you give to our listeners, even if not advice, just kind of a friendly suggestion in terms of why they should have conviction in what they're doing, and second, why they must take an action towards it?
Sure. So conviction in what you're doing, I think like you nailed it before, Shani. It's like, so to look at your values, and that probably takes having a pause. We lead such busy lives, is to take time in nature to get away from all this and go, what am I going? What do I really want to do? What's inside of me? And the conviction that you have inside of you is, I think it's always there. It's like that personal voice. And I think to follow that, yeah, you have to create space. You have to create time to listen to that. Whether it's, hanging out with friends, time that's off the, devices. I'm horrible at it. I'm always on them. Outside, sports, arts, music, doing the things that are away from the thing that you think you're doing gives you the time to actually see it from a third perspective. Things like this, having a talk with someone else, really helps you to reflect on what you're doing. So that would be my start now. If you've got an idea, if you've got something, doesn't have to be perfect, just start, give it a go. And I did see your last question, which was a final spark, which I really liked that. So I'll add that in quickly there as well. I know we're going over a bit, but
No,
a
please feel free
quote
to.
or a mantra. I think it's really cool. This is pretty like cliche, but I was watching the Mad Men, the Netflix. This is a while back, and Donald Draper, who's a sort of one of the main characters in the story, he's at a party and with these sort of creative hippie types, and he's a suit, he's a suit advertising suit, and they're having an argument, and his line is that he said, this guy's saying, "Oh, you're selling advertising. You're a bad guy." And he says, "Look, the universe is indifferent." And I really think I love that, because there's no right, there's no wrong.
All right,
No one
okay,
is right.
yeah.
No one is wrong. The world really is what you make it. Every situation is how you see it and how you react to it. I need to remind myself of that every day. It's 50-50. If you do nothing, you get nothing. If you try and control everything too much, the galaxy, the universe will just push you back and laugh at you. So this life is this sort of, finding this intrinsic balance between intention and maybe sort of some carefree flow. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
It does.
that's what I'm trying to do.
And that kind of comes through for sure. And I was actually going to say that thank you so much for sharing the code, because I would have not let you go without sharing that one. Our listeners and people who watch really love to they love this segment where our guest speakers, they leave a quote or a saying, because I think with every quote and a saying a guest speaker leaves, it somewhere reflects the journey somehow. And that adds a lot of value to people who are listening to it. May click for someone on some day when they're listening. So yeah, thank you so much, Giles, for not slipping that away today. A very, very important part of the conversation. And besides being a guest speaker over here, I would just say that you're quite an interesting human being, and I would love to pick your brains about a lot of stuff.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm open to that. Sounds cool. Likewise.
Yeah, I think I have done most of the listening, so I don't know about what you found, but because you had such amazing things to share about not just your life, your journey, but also I think your experiences, which comes as a byproduct in your journey. I feel, which is also the foundation. But I think because the experiences stem from the community and the shared spaces and the whole value that was instilled through your parents of that you work and you get paid, but you need to work to get paid, and you have to fend for yourself and you have to keep working to kind of have that ball rolling on. I think that has probably put you in a really good place, I believe, and I think that really helps our listeners understand that probably what they can get ahead in their life and start working on. So thank you so much.
No
Giles.
worries. Thanks, everyone. And it's awesome to be on the show. And thank you so much, Ishani, for having me. Appreciate it.
Likewise. And if anyone listening to this in Perth or anywhere in Australia or across the globe, you're interested to kind of get in touch with this amazing ball of fun over here, Giles Roberts, the facilitator, the powerhouse, the founder of G Projects. I will leave the links below. Feel free to connect with him. And as I tell my listeners that keep watching, if you've been glued to this episode up until this point, then yay, you like both of us. So again, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and follow this podcast. And until next time, start believing in yourself and keep believing. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.